That's how I would say unconventional, daring, bold, and brave is Sister Denise. So, what is it that I find also in Sister Denise is she brings us into a higher consciousness of our spirituality. Well, she uplifts a lot of us right now into understanding better our relationship with the divine, our own, how would you call it, journey where she has also been, and she has been very, very accessible in terms of of showing and sharing with us her own personal experience for this the Confluence experience. Welcome, Sister Denise, and good morning.
Well, thank you, Sister Ellen, so much for your kind introduction and for inviting me. It's always my pleasure to be with all of you, and especially around the question of women. This is Women's Month. And as you wrote to me, we need to celebrate this, not just only for a day or a month, but all the time. And there are very special reasons why we should do this. And my work, I would say, at least from my angle, is that I try to go deep and find out what are these original causes of the polarities and imbalances that we find in the world today, and which I think can be attributed to the way that our civilization, Western civilization, is gradually actually, I think, falling away. And a lot of it is because of these imbalances. So I'd like to take a look at it from that angle. And I'm not the only one looking at this. There are many researchers who are trying to work out what's going on here. And there are many who take a look at the difference between matriarchal cultures and patriarchal cultures. So the world that we are most familiar with, the world where it is essentially, it's a patriarchal world, and it is characterized by business, war, business, by which I mean big business, even colonialism is part of that. And these approaches to human life, I think, have contributed immensely to creating imbalance in the human world. And there are a few matriarchal cultures, and in those cultures, you see more balance in the relationship between family members, between people of the community. You don't see big cities, you see smaller groups. The women are very much the ones who indicate our relationship with nature, our relationship with each other. It's generally not a nuclear family, but very much more the village rather than the kind of isolated, tiny families that we have, which create a great deal of strain on the social fabric, and which also contribute enormously to difficulties in terms of mental health. So there are many, many areas where you see the patriarchal approach to life has created a damage which is somewhat disregarded. At the moment, people are very concerned about climate change, concerned about war, but because there are big wars raging throughout the world at the moment, and there are many very severe effects of climate change, and it's usually defined as human-induced climate change, which is connected with big industrial activity, which disturbs the balance of the natural world. But also we can say that these things are happening because this is that time. And so then we also have to look at the world in terms of a large time scale. And in my work, I study and practice Raj Yoga, which is connected with the Bhagavad Gita. And we see in that, which is part of a greater legend of the Mahabharata, which shows how the world goes through huge phases of changing and getting completely reset. And within that, it shows the problem of attitudes towards women as contributing to the collapse of society as we know it. So it's quite a wide overview that I'm looking at. And I'd also like to introduce another image that comes from the world of India and Indian mythology, and that is the image of Vishnu. And I don't know in any other culture of an image, an icon, which represents androgyny. So this image you see, it's an image where there are 4 arms. And as you know, in India, the gods and goddesses are often shown with many arms. And this one, Vishnu, is shown with 2 arms. So one body, one head, legs, everything is one, but arms are 4. And this is a symbol of the balance between the male and female. And the foundation of society is the human couple. So when a man and woman are in balance, there you have a balanced society, because the expansion of anything, a macrocosm, is determined by the microcosm. And if we say that the quantum of humanity is the human couple, then we have a good understanding of how things expand from there. Now, we are in a culture which is pretty much dominated by the Abrahamic worldview. And I think in the world today, all the religions are fundamentally patriarchal, but they did not used to be. In ancient times, you see the women playing a much more prominent role as keepers of the spiritual aspect of life. Traditionally, the women are associated with the home and family, and in the middle of the home, you find the fire. And of course, the fire is usually considered as that which warms the home and that which enables you to cook. And the fire has many symbolic aspects as well. And the fire refers to the spiritual component more than anything. In ancient ways, people would look at the world as the 5 elements of air, earth, fire, water, and ether. And if you put that in counterbalance with what I have come to know as the 5 elements of the soul, there you find purity, peace, power, love, and bliss. And when all of these are in balance, And combined with the elements of matter, you have these spiritual qualities, fundamental spiritual qualities. Then you have a balanced world, and that is a state where you have what some people call paradise or heaven on earth. The ancient people did not look at the human world as just matter, but it was this natural combination of spirit and matter, these two energies together. And the women were the keepers of the spiritual part. The women were very much keepers of the relationship with nature, and the society flourished naturally. Of course, human society was relatively small population. Now, the population of humans is so vast that it has taken over pretty much all the habitats, and we see the effect of the human takeover in all the areas of land and sea and sky, and the balance of nature is teetering on the brink of collapse. So we have a lot of difficulties going on, and people are asking themselves, what's happening? Why is this happening? If we look at religion and science, which are key factors in the world today, religion tells us that human beings are males or females. They show us that a human being is a physical body. And as soon as a person is born, they are given their identity. You are a girl, you are a boy. Life for boys is like this, life for girls is like that. And the way the society is managed is very much determined by the role of the man and the role of the woman. And the woman is progressively subjected to the convenience of the man. And this is why we get an imbalance. When you look at a difference or comparison or contrast between the word spirituality as compared with religion, then you can look at it in a different way. And spirituality will say that a person is primarily a being, a soul, a spirit, and secondarily, it is associated with a perishable body. And although religions do say that the soul is eternal and immortal, at the same time, that's not emphasized. What's emphasized is you are your body. And I think, to me, this is the fundamental mistake that is the foundation of the civilization that we are in at the moment, and which is also the reason why it has fallen apart. And everything must come into being, persist for some time, and eventually fall apart, at which point something else comes in and it persists for a while before again that falls apart. This is one of the key messages of the Bhagavad Gita, and it's important to remember this, that there is nothing that remains in a certain condition forever, and that includes civilization. So everything passes through change. And there are periods of time when the world is in balance and periods of time when the world is out of balance. There are periods of time when everything is in its pristine condition. And as time goes by, everything gradually loses that pristine state and breaks apart, slowly declines, and reaches a very low point, at which point it goes through massive and often cataclysmic change. And so this looking at the state of women in the world today, I think it's quite interesting to look at it also in this wider context where the state of nature and the state of human society are also under tremendous stress and tremendous duress and are, in many cases, in many ways, in a state of collapse. And there are people who try to stop it and make it go away. And I think these are people who do not understand that the world must pass through these changes. But people of a religious and scientific bent, where there is more concern for the material things, they don't have this in the narrative. And I use this word narrative. I like this word narrative a lot because it's the way people talk to each other about what the world is and how the world is and what's going on. This is what you hear in the media. This is what you hear in your school education, all the way up to very higher education. This narrative is going on that everything is in a state of progress. We are getting better and better. Everything is getting better and better. But what we observe is that there are many signs of many things that are not getting better at all, getting worse. And it's dangerous. And so people are worried. And a point comes where people start to question the narrative. And the foundation of the narrative is the patriarchal voice of the religion that underpins our society. It doesn't really matter which religion you're talking about, but the conventional religions, the mainstream religions, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, and their derivatives are all giving the same narrative. And science, which has emerged strongly in the last couple of centuries, backs this up, supports this, and says, yes, everything is matter, and spirit is an ancient old wives' tale or something like that. Yet, at the same time, there are so many people who are thinking about the spiritual part and looking for more information. So I think the first message that spirituality would say is that it is a mistake to divide humanity into males and females, because that applies only to their biology, only to the physical instruments used by the human spirits to engage in interaction and perform their roles in this world. But actually, the spirit is the being, and the being is the self. The self is forever, and the self comes into action through the body. And then you have another element which is introduced into the mix, and that is that the spirit, being eternal and immortal, has continuity. The body, being perishable and mortal, doesn't have continuity. And when we're looking at the problems, not just only the imbalance between males and females, but many other polarities. There are conflicts, oppositions, tearing apart between the rich and the poor, the north and the south, the east and the west, the males and the females, the humans and nature, and so many other ways in which things are tearing apart due to being extremely polarized. And so this presence of an interest in spiritual matters is, I think, like a new life coming up, like new springs of new shoots. I mean, we're in Europe, at least, the spring season. And so the trees are getting their leaves and the birds are getting ready to reproduce, and the insects are quickly gathering their nectars and pollinating the trees, which are all in blossom. So this spring season is almost like an analogy for this time of a spring season in the state of the world. So you have old things decaying and new things, in a sense, feeding on that decay and coming up for a new season of fertility and beauty and joy. So I think it's a kind of message to us human beings saying, you cannot impose through laws or anything like this. You cannot impose a change of consciousness. People will have the consciousness that they have. So if we want to bring about change in this extreme polarized state, of course it needs change of consciousness. But I think the question is, how do you cause a change of consciousness to arise? Some people, they will say, well, I don't see the problem and therefore the problem isn't there. And that's fine for me. And okay, fair enough. But more and more people will find it difficult to take that position because the problem presents itself too strongly. And the circumstances are so weighted against balance and in favor of polarization that circumstances are getting progressively unbearable. And something that's unbearable is very, very difficult to deny or to shake off, or to pretend that if I don't think about it, it'll just go away. That's not happening. And so to introduce a change of consciousness, I would say it has to begin with the individual. And when an individual changes their consciousness, it's partly spontaneous. It's partly because of access to information that they hadn't had before or that was otherwise unavailable. But I think it is the case that more and more information about the importance of balance between the genders is coming through. And people are beginning to take it on board. You also find that these positive changes are entering into what we might call the mainstream through, for example, you see this in fashion, where in previous times the clothing of men and women was very distinct. and the society had tremendously powerful taboos against men dressing as women or women dressing as men. They really wanted to keep people very separate, and this was done to a large extent by clothing. And nowadays, it's absolutely normal for clothing to be the same for men and women. Either way, men are saying, I want to wear colors, I want to wear all kinds of different types of robes, bringing in things from other cultures, where, for example, in many of the Asian cultures, the men will wear lungis or sarongs and long skirt. In Scotland, of course, there's the kilt. Women wearing pants, everyone wearing all kinds of different colors, hairstyles being much more unisex, women coming into professional positions which were previously reserved by law and by social dictatorship only for men, and women are getting through these things, and more men are questioning their limitation to work that is what men have to do, and they cannot do anything to do with what is considered women's work. So all of this is also breaking down. So you do have a polarization between those who want to maintain this very patriarchal approach to life and those who are coming more and more into life saying that is irrelevant, that is out of the question, do not put me in these boxes, these limitations, I will not comply. And along with that is coming more and more and more interest and information in meditation, in matters of the spirit. The concept of reincarnation is gaining more and more interest. The idea of the soul reincarnating into different genders. It's even an aspect of spirituality that every soul has the same number of male and female births in their time cycle. So you cannot really say that a person, a being, is male or female. The body, yes, but not the spirit. Spirit is genderless by definition. And when you look at this image that I was mentioning earlier about the androgynous form of Vishnu, which is from India, you see this. The face could be male or female. The hairstyle could be male or female. The dress could be male or female. And the presence of the four arms is saying that in a civilization that's balanced, there's not much difference between the male and the female, and they live together in a complementary way. It doesn't mean that women have to become men and men have to become women. That is a meaningless idea. It's all about being complementary, in balance. And then you have balanced and natural family relationships where people are not divided against each other, but everyone is in complementary relationship with each other and with nature. And the way that the world works is a certain kind of logic. The way the world works at the moment is very much counterproductive. Short-term benefit, long-term catastrophe. And people are just no longer willing to go for that. And we're also finding that the institutions that had set up this division, this patriarchal system, is no longer so much respected, because it is itself becoming corrupt, double standards, hypocrisy, all of these things, which are elements of deterioration that cause a system to break down and fall apart. So if we return for a moment to my analogy of this process of the world where everything starts new and pristine and gradually deteriorates very slowly over time until it reaches a point of collapse, whereupon new energy comes in and restores and replenishes the social world and the natural world. But this period of change is very, very difficult for people to manage, because in a very strong way, a very catastrophic way, things are breaking down in an intolerable way. Also, people are afraid, people are confused, they're looking for support. You cannot find support from the systems that you trusted. And so people start to look beyond. And when you look beyond, that is where you encounter the spiritual. So this tremendous interest in the laws of spirituality, and individuals, one by one, group by group, beginning to live a balanced lifestyle, a spiritual lifestyle, a non-violent lifestyle, a lifestyle where people look at each other as spiritual beings and not as physical bodies, enables us to go beyond racial discrimination, gender discrimination, age discrimination, and so many other ways in which society divides itself and doesn't allow for any permeability, any social mobility. All of these things are artificially restricted. And when the institutions that do this lose power, then the restrictions also fade away and the natural process takes over and restores itself. And you see this in nature when some areas have been very badly damaged by deforestation or a contamination through chemicals or other damage to the environment. How quickly nature restores itself when the damaging activity is stopped. And I think that also happens in the human world. At the moment, in the human world, we see things really difficult, really breaking down. But you have a few areas where things are coming back to a balanced state. So I see this as very positive. And I think also a woman has to think beyond her biology. A woman is not simply an instrument for reproducing the species and unpaid labor to maintain the family home. A woman is far more than this. And in fact, a woman will start to say, you know, I am not my body. I am not my biology. I am not my social position. I am something else. And beginning to identify herself as a being more than a gender. And this also changes things. I think the efforts to liberate women and enable women to be enfranchised and empowered has set women and men against each other because women thought of themselves as women and men as men. So maintaining the same narrative as we have had for 1,000 years and more. But for a woman to say, I am a being, I am androgynous, I am currently in a female costume, but I have experience, past and future, of the masculine, and I choose to develop masculine and feminine characteristics in a configuration that is particular to myself, which makes me a being, an androgynous being. And I think that one of the issues, the big issues that comes up in the world today is the matter of LGBT and more initials, because people think of themselves as physical bodies and are looking for an identity that corresponds with an inner consciousness that does not feel that it fits in the limitation of you got to be a full-on male or a full-on female, and if you're anything else, you're unnatural. And this is because they think God creates bodies. And so the religion says if God creates bodies, then you have to be a proper heterosexual. But then, if you have a different narrative which says, no, God doesn't create bodies, when a man and a woman come together, they create a body which is either male or female, and which is then powered by a spiritual being or a soul, and that the self is not the body, the self is the soul. What does God create? What is the meaning of creation? This is all under question because God is very often described as spirit. And so the interaction between the divine and the human and the divine and nature has to be spiritual in character rather than physical. So as people are starting to look at it this way, the narrative is beginning to change, and ideas that were completely unacceptable, heretical, and had to be stamped out are gradually taking over a little more. And of course, we have this wonderful analogy of what takes place when a caterpillar has to change into a butterfly, this metamorphosis. What happens in the chrysalis is this set of cells called imaginal cells, which start to appear spontaneously within the chrysalis and which get gobbled up by the melting caterpillar mass. But eventually the imaginal cells, which are the ones that say butterfly, not caterpillar, they begin to take over. And then a moment comes when the metamorphosis is complete and the chrysalis splits open and the butterfly emerges, dries its wings, and flies off into the sunshine. This is a very, very interesting metaphor because it does capture what's happening. And I think we can look at this polarization of people and nature as a caterpillar stage. And caterpillar, after all it does is consume and destroy the habitat. And when it reaches a certain point of development, then it goes into this chrysalis and the change takes place. So I think it's very useful, and lots of people are working with this idea of a metamorphosis of humanity. Science tells us we came into being in a big bang, and there'll be another big bang in a long, long time. And by that time, we'll have figured out what to do, and then there'll be another big bang, and there'll be nothing. But the reality of a person is you are an eternal, immortal soul. That means you cannot stop existing. And also, you cannot be brought into existence. And this means that by thinking of things in terms of perpetuity, continuity, endlessness, beginninglessness, we need to start thinking about things differently. And that is becoming more and more acceptable. And then one who understands these things has to start living it, feeling it, being it, interacting in that way. In that way, a change of consciousness becomes natural, progressive, normal. And so I'm very, very positive about our situation, even though there's a great deal of negativity surrounding us. There are many, especially in this gathering today, who are seriously practicing Raj Yoga. We are doing a practice where we are very conscientiously drawing in the energy from the Supreme Being, from God, from the Supreme Soul. And we have to understand that we have a responsibility to do this strongly and to a point where we're able to empower ourselves to a greater extent than the energy of disempowerment that's going on, because we have the possibility. But I think sometimes people do not realize that we need to apply our will to actually become and adopt the consciousness that we are learning about. And when you find these things are getting more difficult, of course they're getting more difficult, but it simply means that we have to make our spiritual practice a little more focused, a little more attentive, a little higher quality, so that we keep up with the opposing fragmentational energy that's going on. I think everybody is finding it difficult, but not everybody has access to this spiritual energy. And I think part of our purpose is to inspire others and maybe teach others how to do this, so that there can be an increasing number of people focused on taking that energy in. And then I think we'll be able to manage. I think it's also important for us to give attention to our peers, because children cannot necessarily appreciate or understand the level that we're working on. It's very important for them to receive the feelings, the love, the consistency, the ideas. But it's really our peers, because then they can create that atmosphere in their families. And so our friends, our relatives, our peers, need to have the chance to look at us and ask themselves the question, how come this person is okay when the circumstances are such that they shouldn't really be okay? What have they got that I don't have? That I think is a good way to do it. The narrative, I keep using this word narrative because I think it's important for us to understand that things that are considered facts are narrative, they're stories, they're ideas that people believe to be facts, but which may not be necessarily. And the other part of the narrative is it gets people to think in a linear way. And to me, a change of consciousness is also part of a change of thought process, a change of thinking. And in the spiritual practice, circular thinking is very important, or cyclical thinking. So just as we've looked at the process of the life cycle of an insect and the winter, spring, summer, autumn, that life cycle, I mean, everything around us is cyclical, but yet the narrative of materialism is linear. And the linear ideas, they start from nowhere in particular, just a particular point that somebody decided to is the beginning. And then it keeps going until somebody decides, okay, that's the end. And nobody thinks about, well, before the beginning and after the end, then what? People don't think about it. But with cyclical thinking, then you see how things have continuity, there is perpetuity, but you cannot grasp it when you're thinking in a linear way. So as people start thinking in a more circular way, a more cyclical consciousness, and especially thinking of the self as an eternal, immortal being who arrives in a body. You don't just get born like that, boom, that's your beginning. No, the soul arrives in the body and lives through childhood, youth, adulthood, old age, and then dies and then starts again and again and again and again. And there is no end, you see. This idea of reincarnation, and of course, together with reincarnation comes the whole philosophy of karma, which we're not talking about in this session, but sometimes we do. And there you have a very different way of looking at things, where the human thinking corresponds much more closely to how things happen in the natural world. And then I think your change of consciousness becomes gradually more and more spontaneous, natural, and it takes over from the linear thinking, because you're shifting from being exclusively materialist to a understanding of how matter and spirit work together. We talk about body consciousness and soul consciousness, right? That's a very good approach. Body consciousness means you think you are a body. You started at your date of birth and you ended at your date of death. And on your tombstone, you have your date of birth followed by a small line, and that's your life, you see. And then you say, is that all? See, and of course, within you, you sense that there's much, much more to you than just a small hyphen between a date of birth and a date of death, and why somebody is like this, and how come this one has good things, this one has bad things, this one is happy, this one is not happy, this one is sick, this one is healthy. There are no explanations given in the materialist narrative, and people are beginning to say, well, we want an explanation. We have a right to an explanation. We're not interested in blind faith. Give us the details. And that demand is there, you see. We need to really understand that this is a study. and a practice. And we have to continue to study and practice and deepen our understanding progressively. And if we are sufficiently interesting, people will be interested. So let us take a moment to turn within. And as you see from the image of the point of light, it's an image that takes us away from the details of the physical world and reminds us that the self is the light, a light, a point of light. A being of beauty who is forever. And as you turn your attention within, you become much more conscious of the being that you are, the quiet of the inner world. You come close to your heart, not the physical heart, but the core of your being. Focus attention on the reality that you are a being of light, made of love, peace. You are pure, and your essential state is deeply blissful. You are power. This is the force and the source of life. You are the living being that gives life to the body. Through your body, you express what is within you, and you respond to what you experience through your body. Meditation is to focus within and leave aside the aspects of matter for a short while, to give attention on the aspects of the spirit. You recognize the spirit is depleted, somewhat contaminated. There has been deterioration. And so you turn your mind beyond the self to the higher being, the Supreme Soul, the one who is the source of your potential, your qualities, the source of peace, power, love. Turn your mind to that being of light. Make contact. Feel that energy beginning to flow into you. To fill the empty holes in your soul. Feel that strength coming into you. Be aware that this connection purifies the soul. Hold to that connection and be steady as that energy flows in. Let it do its work to clean, fill, empower your very being with light, stability. And feel this sense of self as the spirit, a being of light and love. This is what you are. And as this light and power fills you, you also become a conduit. It passes through you and out into the atmosphere of the world, bringing energy into a depleted world. Touching the minds and hearts of others around you. Settle into the stillness of receiving and radiating. Then gently let yourself return back, reconnect with your physical form in the physical world. But still maintain this spiritual consciousness and keep yourself close to the source. Om Shanti.
Thank you very much, Sister Denise.